Welcome into the Toronto Sports Rush right here on the Bet Rivers Network. Remember to like and subscribe. We got great content for you pretty much every day here on the Toronto Sports Rush, so check us out. EJ Hradek here today, and I get to turn the tables on my friend Andy Strickland. He usually gets to interview me. I get to quiz him now on stuff going on around the National Hockey League. Andy, of course, one of the hosts of the Strick Cam and Strick podcast, and also you see him on the St. Louis Blues television broadcast. Andy, how you doing today?
EJ, couldn't be better. Loving the playoffs, and spring came a little bit too soon this year, but
Yeah.
loving the hockey right now, and excited about what's to come over the course of the next few months. I mean, with Toronto having the first overall pick, everybody gets into a frenzy. So we are
Yeah.
officially in a frenzy right now, and I think we're all eager to see how it plays out.
What did you make of the draft lottery while you mentioned the pick? I mean, you're looking at, I mean, the Blues have a number of first round picks this year, and they had two in that lottery, I believe. Now, they could they have gotten to number one with the other pick? I know the Red Wings pick, they only could have gotten to like 4 or 5.
Yeah, they could have gotten to one because they could move up as much as 10 spots, right?
Yeah.
So a
Yeah.
3% chance. And you
Yeah.
may say, well, okay, they only had a 3% chance, but Toronto had an 8% chance, and they still moved all the way up. And San
That's
Jose
right.
moved up, and they were behind Toronto, and they get the second overall pick. So it's always interesting how that plays out. I was actually down at Blues headquarters for the draft, sitting with a bunch of the staff there because if the Blues would have won, we would have done something with Doug Armstrong. We didn't do it because they didn't win the lottery, but
Yeah.
yeah, I was hoping. Listen, even during the year, this is what fans wrestle with, EJ, and you can relate to this. You know what this is like because fans were getting upset when the Blues kept winning down the
Yeah.
stretch. They're like, stop winning because you're hurting yourself in the draft.
Yeah.
You go down to the games, and the games are exciting, and I don't think any fans who were at the games late in the season were hoping that they were going to lose when they were there. They were playing some great hockey, but there's no doubt that they hurt their draft position. Where I think the Blues, the moves that they made at the trade deadline were in an effort to probably make sure that they had a high draft pick, but their goaltending was so good, and they got a lot of really really high level play from some key players that had them in the 11th position.
Yeah, Andy, you nailed it when you said the goaltending was too good because you've been around the St. Louis Blues. You've been around hockey for a long time and individual teams, right? When you go to those rooms, none of the players want to lose. None of the coaches want to lose. None of the trainers want to lose. Like, nobody wants to lose. The management types sometimes with the bigger picture thinking, they have to think about the future and draft picks and, where we stand. The only way you can assure yourself that your team is going to struggle is to undermine the goaltending. And, they weren't going to do that there. They have a really good duo in Binnington and Hofer, and Binnington played much better in the second half, as you know. So it is funny how that works because the Blues had a good team. I thought they'd be a playoff team, and it just didn't work out for them this
Yeah,
year.
I think everyone thought they were going to be a playoff team coming into the season because they did this last year coming out of the Four Nations where they were one of the top teams in the league. And Robert Thomas led the league in scoring in the final 25 games of the season coming out of Four Nations, losing in game 7 to Winnipeg. I think everyone expected the team to get off to a much better start and be a playoff team. But it's interesting, EJ, because I've seen this happen now before. And at the end of the day, these are all NHL players. They're really, really talented hockey players,
Yeah.
and they're a team too. Some teams are closer than others. This was a really close team. Like Braden Shem was an unbelievable captain here in St. Louis. Had a lot of tight relationships with a lot of different people, not just players, but people inside the organization. But the players, when you hear your name mentioned in trade rumors and trade speculation, and we heard Colton Parayko,
Yeah.
and we heard Robert Thomas, I just think it shocked the dressing room to the point where it galvanized the team, EJ.
Mhm.
It brought them closer together. And kind of seeing it up close, I wasn't surprised to see that maybe sometimes it takes something like that for the team to start finding that next gear and playing some better hockey because that's exactly what happened down the stretch. I mean, they
Yeah.
just looked like they were going to potentially even find a way to get in. And some of these teams we're seeing in the playoffs right now, they destroyed down the stretch.
Yeah.
It's like two different teams. Like when they played Anaheim a couple times, Anaheim
Yep.
couldn't compete with St. Louis,
Yeah.
and a number of other teams in the Western Conference. So it's too bad that that they couldn't start playing that way much earlier in the season. And I think that was the biggest head scratcher for management and the coaches.
All right. It was a strange year out west for sure. And it was a strange year for a lot of teams. And it was definitely a strange year for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now, we wanted to talk to you about a couple of different things involving the Leafs. And I want to start with Craig Berube, the coach, because you're in St. Louis. You saw how Craig Berube, the impact he had. They went on that great run, won a Stanley Cup in 2019. So you've seen Craig Berube up close. You know him pretty well. As the Toronto Maple Leafs make a change now, and they go to John Chaika as the general manager, who is more of this, like they said, in their own words, kind of a data-driven guy. Is this a match for you? Because they've been talking. I guess there's some conversations with Chaika and Berube. Berube, I believe, has some time left on a contract. Is this a match for you? Does it make sense for Craig Berube to stay the head coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs?
I mean, listen, on the surface, it's not a great match.
Mhm.
I mean, Craig Berube's a beer drinking, chicken wing eating, old school hockey coach who wants to watch the late game at the bar and talk hockey with you all night long with the boys.
Yeah,
I mean, he's always had a coaching staff that when he builds his staff, he wants guys that he can trust
yeah,
and that want to go hot stove it after
mhm,
games too.
yeah,
And where they have their own camaraderie. I mean, when the Blues won the Stanley Cup, they had an unbelievable off ice chemistry with the coaches,
yeah.
with Steve Ott and Mike Van Ryn, who's with them right now in Toronto. I mean, they
Mhm.
just kind of had something that was pretty close. And Davey Alexander, who doesn't get enough credit, who's the goalie coach here, who was the
Mhm.
goalie coach for Canada in the Olympics,
Mhm.
and every coach that he works with absolutely loves this guy. I was talking to Bruce Cassidy the other day, and
Yeah.
I said, "What stood out from your experience at the Olympics?" One of the first things he brought up was this goalie coach, Davey Alexander. Um, but so it's not a great match. But I do think with Craig Berube, he's able to adjust. He's more current than I think people recognize or
Yeah.
understand. They look at him as maybe like this Neanderthal who just got in all these fights and he just loves the fighting and he wants physicality and he wants nothing but heavy hockey. Listen, he can appreciate skill too. And he'll let you play a specific way as long as you're responsible. It's like you got to have leaders at the top. And I think that's why he respects a guy like John Tavares so much. Tavares
Mhm.
plays the same way every single night. He's a no maintenance guy. He knows when to change. He knows how to prepare himself. He knows, what he needs to do to make sure that
Mhm.
he's ready to play every single night. And, Berube told me during the season that, he's the most prepared player he's ever been around. And he's coached
Oh,
guys like Ryan O'Reilly and some other,
yeah.
he obviously has been around. So I thought that was interesting. I just don't think the players were a good match for Craig Berube.
Mhm.
If you look at the roster, and I think it goes hand in hand with management, with the general manager. So when you ask, hey, is it a good match with the manager? It's a good match with the manager if he can give him the pieces and the players that are a good match that he's got to go to war with every single night and coach try to help win when the pressure is at the highest that you're going to find throughout the course of the NHL. So I want to give it time though. On the surface, what we know about John Chaika, we would say no, it's probably not a good match. But then you see Matt Sundin. He's a guy who obviously played a long time. He's a
Mhm.
player. Craig Berube has great relationships with all different types of players, current
Yeah.
players, former players, skilled players, Hall of Fame guys, tough guys. He could talk hockey with the best of them and fit in any type of group, no matter who he's talking to in terms of hockey guys. So I feel like he and Sundin could quickly get on the same page. And I think Chaika's going to have to sell it a little bit to not just Berube, but to a lot of other people who are working there with the Maple Leafs right now.
I would agree with you, Andy. Knowing the background of Craig from when he was in coaching in Philadelphia and then went and got the opportunity in St. Louis and now in Toronto, and talking to like Ken Hitchcock, who is somebody of like a little bit of a coach guru kind of these guys. He's mentored a lot of guys over the years, and I think Craig spent a lot of time talking to Hitch, and I do think he doesn't get enough credit. I think that he is thought of as, guys who are, I guess, old enough to remember his career, right, Andy? They think of him as this just tough guy, and they don't think of him as someone that really is, looking at all different options. I mean, he wants to win. He wants to be successful. I think he's open to a lot of things. But you bring up a good point about the players. And I think in particular, Nylander, he's had kind of I don't know how to explain their relationship because, we're not in the room. So there's stuff that goes on. We see these clips and we think of those two personalities as different. I don't know. Maybe they get along better than we know. But what do you make of the relationship between those two, from what you know of having been around Craig for so long?
Yeah. Well, listen, I think he probably has a better relationship than people think. I know he's got a good relationship with Austin Matthews. I know that for sure.
Mhm.
Listen, if you're gonna show up wearing a tank top with earrings and Craig Berube's your coach, you better not. You better just play the way that
You
he
better
wants.
play well. You better play well.
Because otherwise he will chirp and he'll give it to you, and that'll frustrate him. If you're more concerned about what you look like walking into the building versus how you play, that's not going to sit well for a lot of coaches, but
Yeah.
certainly isn't going to sit well for Craig Berube. He wants guys that are team first. He always preaches team first. And it's all about the team with Craig Berube. And it's not by accident that he says that. You have a private conversation with him behind the scenes, he's going to say the same thing. So anybody who puts themselves ahead of the team and is just focused on trying to get attention for themselves, that's probably not going to sit well with Craig Berube. And listen, I saw Toronto play live their worst game of the season in St. Louis.
Okay.
It was terrible. And I'll tell you what, when I watched that game, it was maybe the worst effort that I had seen by an NHL team play live
Wow.
in a long, long time. And that wasn't a coaching problem, in my opinion. That was an effort problem. That's a leadership problem. That's a culture problem. That's something that's going on. There's a disconnect inside that dressing room. And if you look at that roster, there isn't a whole lot of connectivity between player to player. They're not a very good roster. They were, I think, the first national game of the season last year. I watched them play live. I remember going on a podcast with Cam and I the next day. I'd be like, that team is not very good. They're just not. And we're so used to seeing them at the top of the standings and seeing Matthews put up crazy numbers and Marner put up crazy numbers, who's no longer there, and Nylander. And we get this idea that this is a really talented, really good team. You got to have depth. And no further point or obvious way to emphasize that you need to have a team than to look at Mitch Marner right now in terms of how he's playing in Vegas. He's the same player, EJ. Everyone's and I think it's so disrespectful to say it's because he's playing against Utah and Anaheim. Like, you got to be kidding me, man. Like, this is the National Hockey League. He can't control who he plays against. Yeah, we all know that Boston and Tampa and Florida, these are real quality teams and championship level teams, and maybe they're built a little bit differently, but give this guy credit. You can't criticize him when he's not getting it done in Toronto, and then when he is getting it done, find ways to criticize well, then anybody would be scoring. Jack Eichel would be putting up a ton of points right now too, and he's not necessarily doing that. So give credit to Mitch Marner. It's a team game. Hockey's the ultimate team game. We've been saying that for so long.
Yeah.
But you got to create an environment where these guys are going to want to excel in. And I don't think he felt that love in Toronto. In fact, I know he didn't. I don't think he felt like he had the support from management. I don't think he felt like he had the support from the coaching staff and from some of his teammates. And guess what? He's feeling it now. Listen to John Tortorella the other day, comes out and says all this attacking on him and talking about how he played before. It's all a bunch of BS. He's like, I've coached against him all these years. So I think to have a coach speak publicly and come out and have his back, I think that goes a long way for Mitch Marner. He never had that. I was reminded of, I don't know if maybe I didn't know this, but he played a playoff series a few years back against Boston. He was playing with a fractured ankle, and the team never had his back. They never came out and publicly defended him. And I think as a star player, sometimes that's what you need. It's what you want. I think it gives you a little bit of energy, a little more confidence knowing that the team has his back. And I don't think he felt like he got that in Toronto. He's getting it now in Vegas.
Yeah. You know what's interesting, Andy, because it has been a little bit of a dialogue in the media over the last couple of days. I know, my colleague and good friend Kevin Weeks and my buddy Steve Levy, they were doing the game the other night. They were pointing out that Marner was leading the NHL in scoring during the playoffs, which, I mean, that's just a fact right now. I mean, he is, and he's, and people could talk about who they played. And, listen, I think a lot of things can be true at the same time. I think that he's in a better situation right now in terms of like he's playing with William Karlsson and Howden right now. He's played. I think Barbashev has been on his line at different times. He's been out there with Eichel. I mean, they play a different way. He's supported in a different way there. You said it. I've said it for many years. It's the ultimate team game. And I always say it's a one trophy league because when we talk about the Hart Trophy, the Norris Trophy, at the end of the day, people only want to win one. And that's the Stanley Cup, right? At the end of this all. So Marner's issues that he had in the past in Toronto, was there underperformance there in big games? The numbers don't lie about that either. There was. I mean, in games 5, 6, and 7, I think he played 25 of those. I don't know. I think he had one goal. So for whatever reason, it didn't happen in Toronto. It's happening now in Vegas. Again, I think a lot of things could be true at the same time. And, I think it goes to the heart, Andy, of this whole Matthews, Marner, Nylander thing. I think with younger players, sometimes there just needs to be tougher love. And maybe a Craig Berube would have been a better fit for the Leafs when those guys were coming into the league, as opposed to Sheldon Keefe and what was going on in Toronto then. So, for me, that when you go back to Craig Berube and the match for the players, I think he would have been a great match for those guys when they were younger coming in and needed maybe a little tough love sometimes.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Although I think there's this reputation for Chief that he's this, hard ass coach, hard nosed coach. And I think the one criticism of him when he was here in St. Louis is that he wasn't holding his star players as
Interesting.
accountable as he should have been. And I think that was maybe a little bit of an issue from management that they wanted to see the accountability maybe, taken up a notch. And so he gives his star players and his best players a lot of rope. He gives them a lot of opportunity. He plays them a lot. And, so I agree with you. I think he would have been harder on Mitch than maybe Sheldon Keefe was. And maybe it would have created a little bit of a different environment. The team was better. They were stacked differently.
Yeah.
And so maybe he would have been the coach who could maybe get them over the top or take them to the next level better than Sheldon Keefe could have done. But I was told that, like, listen, Berube's had conversations with MLSE and different executives at that level, and when they ask him, "Hey, what do we need?" I mean, listen, he needs different players.
Yeah.
And I think
He needs defensemen.
he needs defensemen. That's what they need.
Yeah.
So as much as we focus on Matthews and Nylander and Marner before when he was there, listen, there's a lot of teams. You look at the teams that missed the playoffs this year. I bet you a lot of them have 2 or 3 star players on the team. But then there's a significant drop off. And if you think you can just do it with 2 or 3 good players, it's just not reality.
No. And you make a good point when you talk about Marner having success in Vegas now. One of the things we don't look at is that, Shea Theodore is moving the puck up from out of his end. Noah Hannafin is moving the puck up from out of his end. I mean, these are younger, faster, more, with a better puck moving ability than anybody really the Leafs have had when you think about their group of defensemen over this last several years. And, they're just those guys are really good players. They were both on their respective Olympic teams. So, that makes a difference too when when the forwards are not having to be in their own end longer than they need to be, and you can stretch the game out a little bit and help certainly players like Marner. Would help Matthews. It would have helped Nylander. I mean, you make the great point. I mean, it's about the players and what the structure, where the pieces fit. They just haven't had the right pieces in Toronto to make that move all the way to the end.
EJ, they don't need Austin Matthews to score 70 goals for this team to be good.
Yeah.
I mean, he's done it, but they need other guys who can get to 20, and defensemen who can get to 55, 60 points and 45 points and kind of have good special teams, have a good PK, have consistent goaltending, have a power play that shows up every single night, and get production out of your bottom 6 forwards too. I mean, everyone knew, Nicholas Waugh could still play. He goes to Colorado. It looks like he can still play. Dakota Joshua, I don't know. Maybe that was a little bit of a misread. He's had some health issues off the ice and whatever. Listen, they need him to be better. But Max Domi was your second line center. I like Max. I don't know if he's a second line center on a contending team.
On a good team. Yep.
So I think he can find a role on a contending team. I don't know if he's your second line center. So I just think the way that team was built and everyone gets so excited and so crazy, and they love the Leafs so much, but they fail to just sit back and just truly analyze the roster going into the season and giving a realistic perspective of how good they should be because they're not
Yeah,
very.
Andy, it's funny that we talk about, like, I mentioned in Vegas with Theodore and Hannafin, among others, on that blue line. And, in St. Louis, you saw it there. I mean, Petrangelo was part of that team. Boomister was part of that team. They had other pieces that were really, they were big, strong, but they could move the puck. They had a really good defense. Just guess what I'm saying. And you have to have those pieces if you're going to win. And the Leafs just have not had them during the era of those core four. I mean, Morgan Riley was their best defenseman, and quite frankly, like, he is a middle of the road kind of guy. He's like a 3-4 guy, and now he's moving into the 3-4-5 area in his career. They never really had those guys at the top that make you a real contender to win.
Yeah, and not having Tanev hurt and whatnot. But
Yeah.
you hear all the pressure. Well, it's too much pressure there. It's if you took that Colorado roster right now and put
Yeah.
them in Toronto in Maple Leafs uniforms, guess what? They would have had just as great of a season as they
Yep.
did. Okay, if you would take any other top team and put that roster in Toronto, and you take Toronto's roster and put them anywhere else, and guess what? They're going to be just as bad.
Yeah.
Carolina's roster in Toronto with that coach, guess what? He's going to have them playing like a well-oiled machine that we're seeing
Yeah.
right now from the Carolina Hurricanes. So
Yeah. I'm
it,
with you.
it's not just can't just be about. We hear the excuses all the time.
Yeah.
The teams with the most depth and the most talent. Look at the way Toronto is drafted. Go look. And I'm looking at their draft this morning. I'm seeing all these guys who were drafted who have played over 200 games in the last several years. They don't even play for Toronto anymore.
Yeah.
They're not even playing for the Leafs.
Yeah.
The ones who ended up being good players outside of the Marners and the Matthews and the Nyes and some of these guys, the ones who actually developed into NHL players aren't even playing for the Toronto Maple Leafs. They're playing for other teams.
Yeah. Yeah.
They got a long way to go. So you can draft now. You get the first overall pick, and they got to start hitting some home runs, though.
Yeah.
But when you see that press conference the other day, even it's just like, listen, players around the league, they're laughing at it.
Yeah.
Executives, they're laughing at it, EJ.
Yeah.
And I think if Toronto is good, I think, teams or players would want to go there. But everyone's just got to just calm down a little bit because you never know what tomorrow brings. And they win the lottery the next day, and then
I know.
and then everything is okay. You know what I mean? Like, they hate it. Then the next day, it's like, hey, let's give this guy a chance.
Yeah.
And again, they don't have much of a choice. He's the guy, so we'll see how he does.
Yeah. Let me close with this. Let me ask you this, Andy.
I got to give Toronto a little bit of credit because they went against the grain.
That's true.
The whole market, the whole hockey world was destroying John Chaika.
Yeah.
Before he was even introduced, and they still went forward and hired him.
Yeah.
And very awkward press conference all around. You didn't get a whole lot of hockey questions. You had some bizarre questions that weren't even questions; they were more statements. And nobody knew who to take. Nobody wanted to take charge up on the podium. They'd ask questions. Hey, how long is it going to take for you to build this team into a contender? And John's like, I don't know, Matt, you want it? Matt's like, oh, I don't want to do it. Like, somebody answer the damn question and be like, hell yeah, we're going to be a good team. And we want to have this thing ready to rock and roll in the next year. Give this team and this city, the fan base, some confidence. Make them believe that you have the ability to get this thing moving in the right direction. They didn't sell themselves very well, in my opinion, there.
Yeah, Andy, I'll just say this. I've interviewed John Chaika on a number of occasions going back to his time in Arizona. And listen, I found he did not, there's a lot of hot air and there's not a lot of hard answers. In the end, the proof will be in the pudding. He's getting another chance. We'll see how it plays out. I mean, he's got better resources certainly than he had in Arizona. So we'll see if he can get it done. And you're right, at the end of the day, he's got the job now. So we'll see where it goes. But like, I want to ask you this, because this is the key question for the Leafs. Is it retool or is it rebuild? Because you mentioned they do not have a lot in the cupboard. Mm-hmm. And, the only things they could do, I mean, they could trade Nyes maybe and try to bring in a defenseman to help build their defense because I think, has value. Or they can go in more of a, find out what's going on with Austin and does he want to stay? And then you're talking about a bigger change there. Where do you stand on that?
Well, I think retool is fine. I mean, it's all kind of the same thing. Sometimes teams don't like to say rebuild because they don't want to send that message to the fan
Yeah.
base. But retool, rebuild, it's just patience.
Mhm.
Recognize what you have, recognize what you don't have, and start building out a year out, 3 years out, 5 years out, 7 years out. What's this team going to look like tomorrow, the next day? And start having a plan in place.
Mhm.
Um, and it's like San Jose. I think the same thing about San Jose right now. They probably altered their plan now because of the success they had last year, and Macklin
Mhm.
Celebrini now turning into what looks like a top 5 player in the league. Unbelievable young talent. Now they're probably like, hey, listen, we're closer than we thought we'd be. So maybe their plan changes, but they start to stay patient. Like there's no
Yeah.
reason for them to just start making trades and moving guys and trying to win that. Just be patient. And guess what? You're going to have a cup contender. Anaheim's going to be good for the next 6, 7 years minimum. They're going to be good.
Yeah.
Toronto's got to start modeling themselves after that franchise. And listen, Austin Matthews hasn't met with Chaika yet or
Mhm.
Sundin. And there's this idea out there that they have a relationship, that they know each other. He hardly knows Mats, and
Yeah.
he doesn't know John Chaika.
Yeah.
I think Chaika maybe rented his house in Arizona a few years back, but that was
Mhm.
done primarily through his camp or his family or
Yeah.
whatever. So I don't feel like the relationship is really even there to build off of. They got to get to know each other. And people are like, hey, does Matthews want to stay? Does he not want to stay? Listen, yeah, I think he wants to stay, but he wants to hear what the plan is. If the plan is
Yeah.
that they're going to rebuild and they're not going to be competitive for the next 5 years, then yeah, he's probably going to want to leave.
Yeah.
If they sell a plan that makes him comfortable that this team's going to be ready to compete in the short term, then he's going to want to stay. But they got to sit down. He's got to hear it from them, and we haven't gotten to that point yet.
Yeah, it's listen, the beat goes on in Toronto, Andy, as you know. It's just it's nonstop, it's around the clock. But I agree with what you said. I mean, I think it's really true. I mean, at the end of the day, it's about the players and it's about the team. It's about the puzzle pieces. Do they all fit? They haven't fit in Toronto. And listen, other teams have the same problem. I mean, I just talked to guys with the Dallas Stars yesterday. They have a really good team. They went to the conference finals, and I think 3 straight years. They lost this year. They had a key injury. Trying to figure out, do we sign Robertson? Do we not sign Robertson? I mean, like, these are the challenges for teams when it's easy to go up there and with the first pick, take the best player in the draft. Usually that's something that you can accomplish. It's much more difficult, as you know, right, to put those people who fits and why they fit and does it make sense for your team? And that's the work that the Toronto Maple Leafs have to do.
How many times have you heard Lou Lamoriello talk about the orchestra? You got
Yeah.
the string section, you got to have the trumpet player, you got to have this guy and that guy, and it's all got to come together. Lou knows, you know that, EJ.
Yep. Yep. Hey, listen, the guys who've had success building teams, they understand that. And it's a hard thing to do. It's not like, it's a youth hockey program where you can go pick your guys and get kids to come in and play for you. I mean, you get to draft, you have to develop, you have to trade, you have to do a lot of things to make it
You got to
work. And
get
at the end of the
lucky.
day,
You got to get lucky.
32 teams now, Andy, only one wins at the end of the day.
Got to have some luck. And
That's,
Toronto got lucky.
yeah, they did.
Took advantage of it.
Yeah, we will
Don't
see.
overthink it, Toronto. Gavin McKenna, he's probably the best player in the draft. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? He
Yeah.
may not be McDavid. He may not be Austin. He may not
Yeah.
be McKinnon, but you talk to people, enough
Yeah.
people, it sounds like he's probably the best player in the
Yeah,
draft.
I got to see him as a U8 at the U18s 2 years ago when he
Unless,
was a U16. As you go take care of that dog, Andy. I'll carry this for a second here while you're dealing with that. But
sorry.
he was as a 16-year-old at the U18s, he was by far the best player in my mind. He just blew me away. I think guys that are like that over the next 2 years. I was just talking to Jeff Gordon the other day. I was up in Montreal, and we were talking about when guys come on the scene, they just get picked apart by the scouts over a couple of years. You're right. He may not be McDavid, who is. He may not be Celebrini, who is, but he's a real big time player. He's a point producer. I liken him to a Nikita Kucherov in terms of the way he plays. I'm not going to say he's going to be a Kucherov. That's a Hall of Fame player, but that's what he's like to me. He's a winger that can drive offense and sees the windows open and close, and he's going to be a really good player. So, I mean, my only fear in this draft is that Chase Reed becomes like another Cale Makar. And that would be my only fear. But listen, Cav McKenna, you're getting a good player there.
Yeah, you are, and then that's why the scouts get paid the big bucks. But and people who are like, well, why hasn't Chaika and Sundin met with Austin Matthews and whatever? He's got to get everything in order. He's got to talk to the scouts. He's got a draft coming up. He's got to get find out his coaching staff. He's got to meet with a lot of players, and you don't just meet with your captain and your star. You got to meet with a lot of different guys. He should meet with his captain, and I would imagine they will very soon. But there's a lot of people he's got to meet with. But Gavin McKenna, I don't think people realize who cover major junior in Canada, EJ, how good NCAA hockey is.
Yeah.
If this guy would have stayed and played in the dub another year and put up 150 points, guess what? The hype would match the hype that we saw with Connor Bedard and some of these other guys. And we wouldn't be having this discussion. They think that they're getting Connor McDavid in reality because of the points that he'd be putting up. What he put up last year in the WHL, I think he put up 139 points, 129 points, something like that, in like 57 games, something crazy. So there's a different level between, playing against 16, 17, 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds versus now going to college where you play in the Big Ten Conference. You're playing against other teams that are stacked with first-round picks, but they also have a bunch of 24 and 25-year-old men on the roster too that you're competing against every single night. That's going to prepare him better than it would have been for him to go back and put up a ton of points playing against kids in the WHL. But I don't think – listen, this guy was more than a point per game player as a 17-year-old. He turned 18 during the season, 17, 18-year-old, and he's a more than a point per game player in his first year and only year likely playing college hockey. That's a hell of a season for this kid. I don't think he would have – people should look at it and think that he would have hurt his stock. There was so much hype about him going to Penn State last year.
I know.
What happened now? What happened now where all of a sudden we're debating whether or not he should be the first overall pick? He had a pretty good year there.
Yeah, he had a great year, and you're right. You're 100% right on everything you said about he could have stayed in junior, loaded it up. It's the path now. I think you're going to see more kids do it, and it's the right path because the facilities at these places are unbelievable, and they have a chance to develop. And of course, you're right. There's a little money there. I think he ended up with $750,000, at least that we know of. Yeah. So who knows what else was involved? But Andy, listen, I can talk to you all day about hockey. A little hot stove, and we can need Craig Berube to join us, so we can all hot stove together.
He's on here. He's probably playing golf today. I can tell you that.
Yeah, well, hey, I wouldn't mind me doing that either, but that's another story for another day. Andy Strickland, who is the one of the hosts of the Cam and Strick podcast. You can get that wherever you get your podcasts. He's on the Blues broadcast, and he's dialed into hockey all over the world, really. So, Andy, thanks for the time today. Really appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing you at the draft.
Yeah, absolutely, EJ. You're the best. I appreciate it. Anytime.
All right, Andy Strickland, thanks for the time today. You have been watching the Toronto Sports Rush right here on the Bet Rivers Network. Remember, like and subscribe.